everyone, welcome to our lesson today. We are starting a brand new chapter. We had our test yesterday. So if you guys missed the test, you'll have to take it when you get back. But we're going to start a brand new chapter, which is chapter 8 in your textbook. It is all about polynomials. And right now you might be thinking, what is a polynomial? But we're going to talk about that here in just a second. And we're going to get into factoring. Now, for a lot of people, factoring is the toughest part of algebra. We're going to go slow. We're going to do lots of practice with it, but it is very important, especially if you're at home, to stay up with kind of the lessons, else I fear that you guys may be totally lost. Again, send messages if you get stuck. I'd love to answer them because this chapter gets pretty tough. Okay, so we've got two objectives today. First off, we're going to figure out what a polynomial is and how to find the degree of the polynomial. So that's one concept we're going to learn here in a little bit. And the second thing is that we are going to be able to name polynomials based on their degree and on the number of terms that they have. All right, so let's get started. A monomial is, so mono, the prefix mono means one. So if we talk about a monomial, we're talking about one term. And that's kind of what last chapter was all about. We had one term. It looked like it could have been a number. For example, it could have been the number 5. It could have been a variable. So for example, the variable x. Or it could have been a product of the two. So the product of a real number and a variable. So for example, it could have been 5x. Again, that when they're right next to each other, that means multiplication, so product. We could have even added exponents in, so 5x squared. We could even add in, let's say, exponents and other variables. That also would work. What we cannot add in are addition and subtraction signs. Okay, that turns it into two terms. The plus or the minus is going to separate the two terms, and we're going to learn what a polynomial with two terms is going to be called here in just a little bit. Okay, so that's what a monomial was. That was last chapter. We are graduating up to polynomials. Poly means many. So it is going to have many terms. It could be a sum of monomials is actually the definition. So for example, I could have 5 plus x. That would be one term plus one term. Or I could have 5x squared minus 4y to the third. I have a subtraction sign. I could even add in another plus sign and put the number 7. So this one has 2 terms. This one has 3 terms. But they're both polynomials because poly means many. Okay, so if it has one term, it's considered a monomial. If it has more than one term, it's considered a polynomial. Now, polynomials are going to be named even more specifically here in just a second. So 2 terms, like this one, is going to have a special name on the next page, and 3 terms is also going to have a special name. Again, we're going to get to that here in just a little bit, and it might not be the next page. Okay, so let's talk about, if you go back to our objectives here, we're going to talk about the first one here, the degree of a polynomial. All right, so the degree of, first off, a monomial is the sum of its exponents. Okay, now a lot of people confuse these two, the degree of a monomial versus the degree of a polynomial. When we're talking about the degree of a polynomial, we only use the highest degree. All right, so this might be a little confusing at first, but hopefully you get the hang of it. So this polynomial has 3 terms. We've got one term here, and one term here. Before we can jump and just find the degree of the polynomial, we have to find the degree of each of those monomials. Okay, so first off, we ignore the coefficient. Take out the 3. To find the degree of the monomial, you go up here, it says the sum of its exponents. So we have 2 plus 3, that has a degree of 5. All right, I'm going to again take out the coefficient on this one, and I have 2 plus that ninja 1 there, so 2 plus 1, that has a degree of 3. Take out my coefficient on the third one, that only has an exponent of 2, so it has a degree of 2. Okay, so that was the degree of each monomial. Now, to find the degree of the polynomial, so the whole thing, it's the highest degree of each of those monomials. So in this case, 5 was the highest, so this polynomial has a degree of 5. All right, let's try another one. Again, ignore your coefficient. We've got 3 plus 2 plus the ninja 1. This monomial has a degree of 6. All right, the second one, I'm going to take out my coefficient. That has just the ninja 1, so a degree of 1. And if I take out my coefficient on this one, there is no exponent. That has a degree of 0. And so our degree of the polynomial is the highest one. So in this case, 6. All right, why don't you guys pause the screen now and see if you can do this last one on your own. All right, here's what you should have gotten. Ignore your coefficient. This monomial has a degree of 3. Ignore your coefficient. This monomial has a degree of 1. Our degree of the polynomial, which one's the highest? It should have been 3. All right, so some of your homework tonight will look like that, just to find the degree of the polynomial. All right, so we're going to practice a few of these. We're going to start naming them here in a second, but before I can actually name them, polynomials have to be in standard form. Okay, what that means is that it needs to be written in order. We're going to put from greatest to least. So it's going to be written in greatest to least order of the exponents. Or I shouldn't say that. Let's go back. Of the degrees. Let's use a better vocabulary word here. Okay, so we want the biggest degree to come first when I'm writing this in standard form. Now we've talked about standard form of a line. Standard form of a line was ax plus by equals c. So we're not talking about lines anymore. This is standard form for a polynomial. There's lots of standard forms for different things, but this is for a polynomial. Also, all like terms are going to have to be combined. Now we're going to practice more with combining like terms in tomorrow's lesson, but we'll do just a little bit of it today. Okay, so we're going to practice writing these in standard form. The whole point of this is because I can't name polynomials unless they are in standard form. So we're going to get them in standard form, and then we're going to start practicing naming them, which was our second objective for today's lesson. Okay, so I'm going to look at their degrees of each monomial. So this one has the highest exponent, so that one's going to come first. Then this one, because there's that ninja 1, would come next. That was a positive 3x. And last, we have our constant there of negative 7 would come last, since there was no variable. All right, next one. Biggest exponent was our positive x to the 4th. That would come first. Then would come our 9x squared, which was positive, so I'm going to put a plus. Then we have our negative 7x would come next. And last, our constant would be our negative 3, and that is standard form of that polynomial. This last one is the toughest of the two, because a lot of people look at these x squareds and like, well, which one comes first? Well, technically they both do. This is where we're talking about how like terms must be combined. So if I have 3x squared and I'm adding in a negative 1x squared, that gives me 2x squareds. Basically, I'm just adding my coefficients there. And again, we're going to practice that a little bit more tomorrow. And then I'm going to combine my constants. I have a positive 4 and a negative 8, which combine to a negative 4. That would be the standard form of that polynomial. All right, so now that we know how to write them in standard form, let's go take it a step further and hit our last objective for today, which was to name them based on both degree and number of terms. Now, this for a lot of people is one of the toughest parts of the quiz and the test is kind of memorizing these names. Okay, so we're going to practice that here right now. Okay, we're going to start with the degree. Anytime we don't have an x, so we have already talked about degrees. Remember, that's the highest exponent. So this has x to the 0 power, so hence that has a degree of 0. This has x to the first power, hence why it has a degree of 1. X squared, degree of 2, that was the highest. X to the third, degree of 3. And x to the fourth, degree of 4. Now, they have special names, and I'm sure they probably have special names to 100 or even more, but I don't know all of these, but these are going to be the ones that you're going to be required to memorize. So anything to the 0 power, that means there is no exponent there. That is called a constant, and you guys are used to that vocabulary already. It's what we call numbers without any exponents. They're called constants. All right, now this one might look familiar to you because if you look at it, it's kind of in the form of mx plus b. And we call that a line. So this is called a linear function when we're naming it after the degree. All right, here is one that is going to be new to you, and this is what all of the next chapter is over. Anything to the second power. So if I would graph this, I'll kind of show you what they all look like. If I would graph the first one, it's a straight line going straight across. If I would graph the second one, it's going to be going up and down. If I graph this one, it creates that U-shaped graph. This is called a quadratic. All right, to the third power, if that was our degree, this shows the graph of what it looks like, and we call this a cubic. And anything after that, we are not going to require you to memorize them. You can just say the 4th degree. If it was a 5, you'd say the 5th degree. If it was 100, you'd say the 100th degree. So the ones that you're going to be asked to memorize are constant, linear, quadratic, and cubic. Anything after that, you can just say whatever the degree actually is. Okay, now this is naming them based upon their degrees, their exponents. The next page is going to, or the next slide is going to be naming them based upon the number of terms. Okay, so remember, terms are separated by a plus or a minus. So kind of going back to our vocabulary here, monomial was 1 term, poly was many. We talked about how sometimes there might be 2 terms or 3 terms. There are special names for these, and that's what we're going to get over here. All right, so we said 1 term was the prefix mono. That was a monomial. This one had 2 terms, 9x and a -2. If you think about the prefix for 2 and it, like something with 2 wheels, that's the prefix bi, so binomial. All right, and this we have 3 terms, 3x squared, a -6x, and a +2. So that's got 3 terms. Think about something with 3 wheels. That is a trinomial. Now, just like degrees, where I'm sure they have a name for all of them, we are going to stop at trinomial. Again, you could probably look it up and know all of these terms. I think this one to the 4th power is technically called a quartic, but anything after 4 we are going to call a polynomial. Again, you don't have to memorize anything after 3. Again, if it's to the, if we have 5 terms, we're going to call it a polynomial. I lied about the quartic. I think that was technically the name of to the 4th degree here. I think it was called a quartic, technically. So sorry about that. All right, so on this page, the only ones you have to technically memorize are monomial, binomial, and trinomial. Anything after that, we're just going to use the prefix poly, meaning many. Okay, but technically, a binomial and a trinomial are also polynomials. They just have a more unique name. Okay, so let's try to do both of these. So this is what your homework's going to look like. It's going to say, have you do 3 things. Okay, first thing is to put it into standard form. Okay, so I'm going to make another column here for standard form. Okay, so that will be step 1 of your homework. Step 2 will to name it based upon the degree, which again is your exponent. Step 3 is going to name it based on the number of terms. Okay, so these terms are all going to end in the meal. Whether it's a monomial, binomial, polynomial, trinomial, whatever it is. Okay, so standard form. Is it in standard form? Highest to lowest? Yes, it is. I'm going to keep it that way. Now I'm going to name it based upon the degree, the exponents. If it's to the 3rd power, you can cheat for a while and go back to your slides, or you can start to memorize them. 3rd power, you think cubed, so this is a cubic. Okay, and I'm going to name all of these based upon their degree first. So I'm going to put them all in standard form. All right, so the second one, notice we have 2 of them that are x squared, so I need to combine them. 1x squared plus 2x squared is 3x squared, and I still have a -1. And if I name this one based upon its degree, its highest exponent is 2. This is the hardest one. It is a quadratic. It's that U-shaped graph. All right, number 3 here, it is just 6x. Remember that has the exponent of 1 there, and that would be a line if I graphed it. It's a linear function. And the last one is -5. Technically it's x to the 0 power, so this has a 0 exponent or 0 degree. This one is called a constant. Okay, so that is them based upon their degrees. Now let's name them based upon their number of terms. Remember, terms are separated by a plus or a minus. So on the first one, I have 2 terms. 2 terms meaning binomial. Okay, next one, 3x squared and a -1. Again, 2 terms. This is another binomial. All right, and the last 2, I don't have any plus or minuses on there. These are 1 term apiece, which means monomial for those. And that's going to be kind of the second part of your homework tonight. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said earlier, you do not have to do the entire homework. It is a workbook page that I have copied and posted. You're going to do numbers 1 through 8, and you're also going to do 15 through 20. And like I said, don't forget 15 through 20, you have to do 3 things. Name them, or sorry, first off, put them in standard form, then name the number of terms, and also number by the degree. All right, see you guys later. Bye.